What do we do when adversity strikes? Let's talk about it today on The Good Life. Welcome, friends, to another episode of The Good Life with Professor G. I'm Professor G, and this is The Good Life, like the sign says. Today is a very, very special day because today is my 21st birthday since my 30th birthday. So I'm 51 today, and that's fantastic because I like prime numbers, and 51 is a prime number. Try dividing it evenly, and you'll see that you cannot. And for some reason, I feel like prime numbers have been good to me, like when I was 17 and when I was 31. Now, let's see what 51 has in store. Anyway, enough of that. I want to talk about adversity today. I know I had mentioned in my previous video that I was going to discuss communication, and that is coming next time. But I made an executive decision to discuss this topic today because of some things that I'm seeing in the world and some things that people that I know personally are going through, and even some things that I've been discussing with some clients lately. And it has to do with dealing with adversity. See, when we talk about the good life, we're not talking about the perfect life. We're not talking about the problem-free life. We're not talking about the stress-free life. The good life is something else. And that's maybe a misunderstanding of what the good life actually is. See, those who have discovered what the good life is have understood that the good life is going to include sadness, disappointments, endeavors that you maybe started and could not complete, or a relationship that went sour, or someone passing away, or a variety of things that could go wrong in life. But that does not mean that you cannot have a good life if you've experienced these things. In fact, it's in overcoming and learning from those adversities that make us worthy of living the good life. I want to share with you a passage that is probably one of my favorites from the Bible, and it's in the book of Ecclesiastes, and some of you might be familiar with this, but I'm going to share this scripture with you. It says, "For everything there is a season, a time for every activity under heaven, a time to be born, and a time to die, a time to plant, and a time to harvest, a time to kill, and a time to heal, a time to tear down, and a time to build up, a time to cry, and a time to laugh, a time to grieve, and a time to dance." So for everything there is a season. So if you are going through a difficult season at this moment, it doesn't mean that this is the season that's going to be here always and forever. It is a season, like spring turns into summer, and then fall and winter, and one season comes and then it goes, and then the next season appears. What I think happens is that a lot of people resist the season when it's time to grieve or a time to cry, and they resist it and they extend the season, and they make mistakes and they don't learn from whatever the season wants to teach them. And those mistakes extend the season and maybe lead to a worse season. So here's the key, I believe, to dealing with a difficult season, which everyone goes through. Everyone goes through difficult seasons. There's a story of the Buddha, when he was in northern India teaching, where a woman lost her baby. Her newborn child had died, and she was distraught by this, of course. And it says that she went to the Buddha and she said, uh, "Dear teacher, could you please do something about my child's death?" And he said, "Well, I might be able to do something, but I need you to do something first." And she said, "What is it? I will do anything." And he said, "Go to the town and go to each home in the town. And for every home that has not had a loss, have them give you a mustard seed and then bring them all to me. And let's see what I can do." So she, of course, went running to the town and started knocking on doors and asking each home if they had had a loss in their family. And she came back to the Buddha, of course, with not a single mustard seed, because each home that she went to had suffered a loss of some sort. They had all gone through this season of grieving. And when she returned, she realized why it is that the Buddha had given her this task. And she realized that she wasn't alone. And on her journey to find these mustard seeds, she heard many stories from many people about their losses and realized that she was not the only one, that this was part of the human condition. So we all go through difficult seasons. Now, there's a few things that we need to do when we have a difficult season. And I think that one of the main things is, what can this season teach me? Or why did this season show up? What did I do? What did I miss? Now, it doesn't mean that there's always something that you did to cause a difficult season to show up. But sometimes we do things that cause a difficult season to appear. And if that is the case, what can we learn from it? Now, even if this season was not something of our own doing, each season can teach us something valuable about life. Another thing it can do is it can teach us that we share this situation with the rest of humanity. We are part of the human family, and no one is exempt from difficult seasons. In fact, I'll be honest, I am suspicious of people who lead perfect lives, who seem to lead perfect lives. I am suspicious of those people. They are either not sharing the difficulties in their lives, or something's really wrong. And I'm suspicious of those people, to be quite honest. So, to be alive is to have difficult seasons and to have challenges and obstacles and adversity, right? But that does not mean that you cannot have the good life, because the good life includes all of these things. I'll share one more story. Uh, when I was in college, I discovered Joseph Campbell. And some of you may know Joseph Campbell. He's very well known and has written many wonderful books like The Power of Myth and The Hero with a Thousand Faces. And he basically traveled the globe. And I intend on speaking more about him and actually the power of myth in psychology and how that can help us to realize, some of our um, human traits and culture and all that stuff. But When I was in college and I first discovered him, I started to read all of his stuff. And I came upon a story from Northern England that he shared about a kingdom that was um, under the spell of a witch, right? And the spell was a drought that caused everyone to go without water for a very long time. And as you know, humans cannot live without water. So the peasants obviously and the poor people were affected tremendously, but eventually even the royalty of the kingdom started to feel the drought and they were starting to run out of water. So the king, who was the reason for the spell, the curse in the first place, um, had five sons, five princes. And he said to his oldest, listen, I was a bad boy, and this witch put a curse on the kingdom. And she told me that the only way for this curse to be lifted is if I went over there to where she lives on the other side of the hills and gave her a kiss. And his oldest son said, so do it. And he said, no, I can't. She is a hideous creature. There is no way that I'm kissing her. Absolutely not. And his oldest son said, I'll take care of it. Tell me where she lives. And he said, go on horseback, and head out to the hills. You will find her on the other side of the bridge. And he said, okay, well, that's a day's travel. I better head out. So he, took off and gets to the place where the witch was living on the other side of the bridge in the hills. And when he sees her, he realizes what his father meant by this creature being a hideous, ugly creature. And she said, the spell will be broken if you give me a kiss. And the oldest son said, no way. And he took off and went back home. When he gets back, now here's 2 days later, because it was a day's ride, the king said, well, what happened? He said, you were right, father. She is a hideous beast. I am not kissing her. So the next son said, how ugly can she be? I will go. Same story. Went, came back, drought still, cursing the kingdom. People are starting to die of thirst. The king and his wife and everybody's affected. The third son goes, same thing. The fourth son goes, same thing. Finally, the youngest of the five goes on horseback. Things are getting desperate. Now we're, 8 days later, and that youngest son takes the day-long trip and encounters the witch. And she says, your four brothers have been here, and I have not seen your dad, but now you are here. Have you heard my demands? And he said, not only shall I kiss you, I shall embrace you as well. And guess what happens? For those of you who like Disney, he kisses the witch, he embraces her, and all of a sudden she becomes a beautiful young princess. The skies open up, the rain pours down, and the kingdom is saved. What is the moral of that lovely, funny story? That in life, you must embrace the ugly parts of it as well. If you do not, you will not be able to enjoy the beauty and the fullness that life has to offer. You must be willing to kiss and embrace the ugly witch if you are going to experience the princess and the water that brings us life. That story has stayed with me for many years, and I think of it often, especially when I'm going through a difficult season. I think about, what can I learn from this? I need to embrace this part of my life. It doesn't mean that you don't try to fix things. It doesn't mean that you cower under the stress of life and not do anything. What it means is that you learn and you appreciate the good and the things that life has to offer that's a positive, and the people that come along to help you through whatever you're going through, and realize that the good life is not the problem-free life. The good life is not the stress-free life. The good life is not the pain-free life. The good life is the life that you learn to live despite all of those things. I want to finish with a quote from Khalil Gibran. He wrote a book called The Prophet that some of you may be familiar with. It's a series of poems, and they're beautiful, just beautiful. I would recommend everyone pick up a copy of The Prophet by Khalil Gibran and spend some time reading these wonderful poems. But he has one poem that has a passage in it that describes exactly what I'm referring to here. And I want to share that with you today. It says, "Your joy is your sorrow unmasked, and the self-same well from which your laughter rises was oftentimes filled with your tears. And how else can it be? The deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. Therefore, the height of your joy can equal the depth of your sorrow. If you never experience the valley, you will never experience the mountaintop." Thank you for listening today on my 21st birthday from 30. And I couldn't think of anything else better to do with this day than to share this message with you guys. What season are you going through? If it's a wonderful season, there's things to learn there too. It's a time to plant. Go ahead and do it. But if it's a difficult season, what can you learn from the feelings that you're feeling and the situation that is facing you? If today's video brought something good to your life, please like and subscribe and share it with your family and friends. In addition, if you'd like individual counseling, I'm available in the state of Florida and in the state of Colorado, and my contact information is in the description below. Till next time, go ahead and have yourself a good life.